Hello there. Welcome to episode 30 of Bow and Blade, a podcast brought to you by medievalists.net, your home for all things medieval on the internet. Bow and Blade gives you a seat at the bar as scholars of medieval warfare go beyond the Wikipedia articles to talk about the debates and the questions that we're working on today. I'm Michael Livingston, Distinguished Professor at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina.
I'm Kelly DeVries, and I'm Professor of History at Loyola University of Maryland. To be next year, Distinguished Visiting Professor at the Air Force Academy. So,
Woo!
yeah,
Big cheer.
Yeah, I got to tell them that, soaring over the Vikings, soaring over the waves is a metaphor. It doesn't really mean they were flying.
They weren't flying.
They were not flying.
Today's a momentous occasion. It's episode 30, which is a lot. But it also means it's time for a Q&A.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be doing a Q&A here. For this Q&A, what are you drinking at the bar, my friend?
Well, we usually go with whatever and on the Q&As. And I was thinking about it, but you and I announced to the group here, announced to our listeners on this upcoming Friday, we are going to be in Bordeaux. We're going to be looking at the battlefields in the south of France and 100 Years' War battlefields in south of France and along the Loire River.
It'll be in the past as you all are hearing this, but yes, as we're recording this, it's in our future.
But we should announce it that we are going to try something different. We're going to actually try to cover the Battle of Castellone on the battlefield. So
we'll see. We'll see. We're gonna.
Yeah, that's right.
Kelly's jumping all kinds of guns there.
It's so exciting. Okay, I'm going to go with a Bordelais wine.
A Bordelais wine.
Deep, rich red wine, just to get myself, I think, ready for our nice little excursion.
No, that's very good. I'm having a bourbon. It's among our questions.
A good French bourbon is.
Among our questions. Came today was from Phil Feller, who wanted us to know, if we did not know, that there is a Blade and Bow bourbon whiskey, and yet we knew. we have asked before that Blade and Bow sponsor Bow and Blade. They have not yet responded, but we once more make that call that we welcome the support of Blade and Bow. Cheers. Because it's a good bourbon. It's very good.
Well, so, we're not above changing the title of this to Blade and Bow just to get that sponsorship. You want to drive up a big bourbon truck to my house and just drain the tank or something? I'm changing the title. We could also go with Strongbow if the cider company wants to get in here. We go Strongbow and Blade.
Man, my first trip to England, I discovered Strongbow, and I was like, "This is awesome." Now there's quite a few ciders here in the States, but back in the day, there certainly weren't where I grew up. So I was really excited to find that.
And we're kind of medievalists, so we like anything that harkens back to the day. I mean, Charles III is not called Strongbow. King Charles III is not Strongbow. That's something that's going to be coming out in the Middle Ages, Strongbow.
Yeah. So we welcome support from Blade and Bow for Bow and Blade. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that reminder that we needed to once more shout out our non-namesake, but our near what is that?
When you switch the words around?
Yeah, we switch. I don't remember what.
I don't know. I think it happens every time when somebody cites our books. Whoever's the author first will always be second on their
citation. We get that a lot. For some reason, if I've had more bourbon, it happens more often. So
we keep repeating them over and over again.
It is our Q&A, and we've got a lot of them here.
Some really interesting ones too.
Yeah, and again, like, please, people, if you've got some, send them in. Obviously, we won't get to them this time since we're getting you the call now, but we'll put them on the list for next time. Speaking of stuff, let's actually start with a couple of updates, as it were. Um, we have mentioned this a couple of times how amazing we thought this was. Sam Stevens is the young fellow's name. Sam Stevens heard our podcast about the Siege of Rhodes.
Our first
And
siege of Rhodes, wasn't it? It was.
yeah, and us complaining, not complaining, but like lamenting that that we didn't have any Ottoman sources for that siege. And so Sam Stevens wrote and said, "Yeah, we do. We do.
Right.
Here's a list. Nobody's dealt with them,
No, in
but
fact, there's
but
only what, one edited that he's got. He's got lists, and they're only one edited.
it's awesome. So he actually sent an update. Really cool. I hope we get to meet Sam Stevens at some point. Is Sam? Maybe he's in. I bet he's in Istanbul. We're going to be in Istanbul, Sam. Look us up. Send me a note.
Absolutely.
We owe you a drink. He points out he's been looking at one of these. All right. And points out, and this will kind of harken back to the Siege of Rhodes, the
50
episode we did.
Yeah.
There were bad decisions, he says, on the part of Piri Mehmed Pasha, who was one of the Ottoman commanders, whereas the other general, Ahmed Pasha, was more effective. All right. So this is one of the things that this chronicle is talking about. So he says that this chronicle supports this idea. And about how Suleiman was relying on these generals. And it sounds like really interesting information.
Yeah.
It also, he says Suleiman himself appears less in the text than one might expect. That is interesting. Another part of the manuscript that has been a surprise is it shows how essential musketry was to this campaign for the Ottomans. That, we all talk about the artillery.
Yeah.
But that this gives a lot of information about the musketry.
Yes.
Which would be, very interesting. Very interesting. And he says it has an extensive description of the trench warfare and tunneling the Ottomans conducted from their side, right? We have this information from inside.
Yeah, we do, for the tunneling. Yeah.
And here to have it from outside. So we have two perspectives on this. This is too awesome. It is too awesome.
Yeah.
He says he's planning to go through the other Rhodes Chronicles and see if he can turn it into a larger project. We're like, yes, please.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody,
yes, please.
I mean, just having finished this, the volume that came out in celebration of the 500th anniversary of the Siege of Rhodes last year. I didn't use any Ottoman sources. We don't really have a lot that had been known. I tried to milk what we did know, and there were individuals who had worked with Ottoman material. So all this is very interesting, and I would have to say, as the Brescian engineer on the side of the Hospitallers is shot through his eye, comes back after 6 weeks of recuperating with it, but his eye and part of his skull is shot away. That has to have been handheld firearms. It can't have been if he's looking at a hole in the wall to sight guns from inside, that's probably what was shot through there. So I'd like to know more about that. There's very little that is said by the eyewitnesses there, especially by Jacques Bourbon, who is our main account of the siege, because he goes day by day by day. So anything will be great, but I love the fact that there's more about the trenches, because we have the observation of what the trenches are. We don't actually have where they're digging them. Be interested to see if they talk about that wall being lifted up and put back down, and they couldn't. They had to go back from the ditches from the mining, because they were afraid it was going to fall down. There's so many different things. Now, I would say I'm not entirely surprised that Suleiman wasn't there in person, or isn't in the account in person, because when it comes to these sorts of accounts that are written by Turks, so others like Mehmed's accounts on the siege of Constantinople that are written by the Greeks, he's employed the Greeks to write his biographies. They're a little bit more. It seems to be a Western European idea of let's promote the commander in chief. the commander in chief in a Turkish account, not often listed because God, of course, is the director of all the sieges. But having the two generals mentioned, yeah, Sam, keep working, keep
Yeah,
setting.
man.
This is great stuff.
It's
We're going to be
awesome.
in Istanbul in a few weeks, and I hope to ask some of the people there who are in the conference. We're Mediterranean, medieval Mediterranean history conference, military history conference. I'm hoping to ask some about other possibilities of chronicles around this period of time too. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Another update. We did our episode on the Battle of Sluys, and Eric Odegaard wrote, and he and I had a magnificent, good time going back and forth, talking about landscape archaeology that's been done in that area. Now, this is landscape archaeology, not looking for that battle, but simply trying to reconstruct the where the channel was.
Yeah.
What was this landscape back in the day? And he was able to point me to some sources that I had not seen, which always thrills me as somebody who gets into mapping. So that was awesome. In fact, now my Google Earth, ever compounding Google Earth, now has a whole section on Sluys that I turn on and off if I need. That really has us in much more detail than I had before, which is, in turn helps us map potentially where the battle was, even though it was at sea at that point. And that also then can help us kick around some of these ideas about astronomical data, right? Where was the sun? Where were the tides?
Mm-hmm.
How would that have affected the situation?
Yes.
So very cool stuff there too. Thank you, Eric.
And as so much of that battle is determined by Edward's arrival and how he does
Yeah.
maneuver the ships up against the ones that are all the French and have all tied together, clearly trying to make a fortress sort of out of their navy. That is essential work. I still, remember my first visit to Sluys. There was a cow sitting essentially. It says, here's where the Battle of Sluys was essentially fought. It's a cow out in the middle of a nice, very, because it's the sediment, so very, very productive farmland there, but not exactly what you were thinking about with a naval battle.
That's right. That's right. And we talked about that at some length. So again, thank you, Eric, for reaching out. Awesome stuff.
I think
Um,
archaeology is going to change some ideas about battles in this new conflict archaeology that's starting to, and all archaeology has just boomed in the last couple of decades as technology gets better. And so, yes, keep us aware of these things.
yeah, we're these one of the unfortunate things about academics, well, about any specialty in anything at this point, is that you inevitably become kind of siloed in what you're working on because you have to know so much to specialize that it's very difficult to kind of know what's in the silo next door. It's so much harder to grasp across things when you have to tunnel down so deep, and there's only so many hours in the day. So yeah, having somebody kind of be like, oh, did you know about this thing over here? It's like, wow, did not, and that is fantastic.
Exactly.
That now informs things in a new way. So really, really awesome stuff. Appreciate you all sending in those kind of notes. That's
Yeah,
great stuff.
absolutely.
And I should include there also the notes that we get that are just like, hey, wanted you to know that I'm really enjoying the
Yeah.
podcast, right? I get a few of these a week, and it's awesome. It makes this kind of worthwhile, right? That we're doing this, to hear that somebody enjoyed it. Awesome. Thank you guys.
By
Awesome.
all means. Yeah, by all means,
Um,
and keep us aware of these archaeological things.
yeah.
Even I used to have fun going through the York Archaeology Review in the 19th century because you'd find things such on the Battle of Borouge Bridge where it says, "Oh, and by the way, Mrs. So and so in her basement has a piece of armor that was found, in the battle, in the river." And you go, where? Where was it found? We don't know what river it was.
Yeah.
There's a ford, and we don't know where they crossed. And
Uh,
it's
those those things are amazing. They can also be kind of misleading at times.
Mm.
I'll say when I
Yeah.
was working on Owen Glendour, there was this passage that everybody kept citing that went back to one of these this kind of local journal. I think it was the Radnorshire Journal or something, and it was like, oh, there's this passage, and it relates to this battle, the Battle of Bringlass, which is an amazing battle that I really love, and I'm like, man, this passage gives us so much information. Where's it come from? Where
Yeah,
does it come from?
exactly.
And everybody kept citing this one thing.
Oh no.
And eventually I was able to track the damn thing down. And it was from a historical fiction novel.
Yeah.
Um, this person had quoted without citing it, had just been like, oh, and this source says
Yeah.
that's a historical fiction, like a romance novel, and quoted as if it was, but then everybody like moved forward as if it was a real source. It was
Yeah.
like, no,
But
it's not. That is a novel.
what do you think
Wow.
if you were the writer of that novel and now you're quoted constantly?
I mean, they're long dead now, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they were. I mean, and I'm not going to name names, but like the big names in the field were like, and this source says,
Yeah.
and they're all like building castles on this thing, not castles literally, but like they're
Yeah,
building atop this source.
that's right.
And I was like, I got to find out what it is. Yeah, it was a novel.
Chase it down. Yeah.
So that was unfortunate.
And then you
Though-
realize some of these are circular. That they,
well, yeah,
somebody puts it out as a piece, then they define it by something else, and then you find out that other thing is defined by the first thing.
by the first thing, you're like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
It turns out we don't know anything.
No.
Speaking of historical fiction. Speaking of historical fiction, not only can it be hilariously getting into citations, but Sanders Marble, one of our listeners, who's a historian in his own right.
Yeah, modern military historian, absolutely.
We're not going to hold that against him, Kelly.
Well, a little bit maybe. They've got.
I'm not going to hold that against him.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I like Sanders. Sanders is a good guy. But he has documents. He's got all these sources.
Yeah, it's not fair.
And what do you do when you've got all those sources? We wouldn't know.
You know things is what happens.
Yeah.
Sanders asks, what historical fiction do the professors like the most? And I assume he means us. So what's your favorite historical fiction?
Boy, I've been going over this because you've got Bernard Cornwell has done a lot of acknowledgments of your books, quotes for your books, even introductions. And he's probably the greatest living historical novelist for medieval history and also Napoleonic.
He's amazing.
He's amazing. And I do like the Uhtred series, kind of the Viking, Alfred the Great, up to Brunenberg series that he's just finished.
Which we just had the movie of the last thing.
Yeah, last battle.
Seven Kings Must Die, the Brunenberg film.
And the Brunenberg, placing Brunenberg where Mike has it, and that was pretty nice.
He does.
I'm reading Harry Sidebottom right now. He's got some set at the time of Valerian's capture by Shapur, and based on a real character by the name of Ballista, of all things. And we don't have any knowledge, so he's really ranging a bit on the movements of armies and things like that. But it's fun.
Yeah.
So Harry Sidebottom, go.
I mean, yeah. How can I not say Bernard? After everything that that I've done with him, really is. And look, Bernard's a cool dude.
He's a great guy. Great guy.
Just
it's always nice to find out a successful author is a good person too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first time I met him, I thought, there's no way he's as cool as I want him to be, and he was cooler. I was like, oh man,
yeah,
this is great. So yeah, I love Bernard Cornwell's work. Yeah, I'm gonna not say my own work. So I'm not gonna give you Shards of Heaven, except I just did.
Yeah, read it, guys. Good stuff coming back out.
Well, we got to figure out. I clawed back the rights on that, so I have a offer from a publisher. We'll see if I do that. Anyway, the thing I would actually say here, and this is like a deep cut or whatever you want to call it, because I don't want to say Bernard, even though seriously it's Bernard. Um, so there was an author when I was a much younger fella, um, who I was really into fantasy, and I picked up a book by Park Godwin called Firelord, which was about King Arthur, and then he had one on Robin Hood called Sherwood. Had one on the Battle of Hastings on Harold. He did a number of these books, and I mean, I haven't read them in several years, but they hit at a time for me, and really kind of walked this, I thought, amazing line between giving you historical sort of like this could work, while also sort of checking boxes for mythology, legend, if whatever you'll have it, right? So doing Robin Hood as a sequence of the Norman conquest, right? That this is part of the Anglo-Saxon sort of lingering rebellion, like worked really, really well, and the writing was just song poetic, beautiful in spots. So yeah, I'd say like kind of meaning for my life in that regard. Like yeah, Park Godwin's work really was amazing for me.
It's interesting to know how you get into medieval history. I think it was Mary Stuart's
Sure.
Arthur books that were very good. Now, don't go back and read Park Goodwin, because I went back and tried to read Mary Stuart's, and I wonder what the heck, why did I? Because it wasn't particularly good. But I have a student, former graduate, Natanya Barron. Shout out to Natanya Barron. She's has published her first Arthurian book and or novel, and they're going well. She signed with a good publisher, and it looks like she's going to produce at least a trilogy, looking at the Arthur world through the women in it. So
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go, Sanders. There's some stuff for you.
Yeah.
None of those, I will note, were modern.
No. By the way, no.
Sorry, Sanders.
Although I do like the Burning Gunther mysteries that are set in Germany in World War II and right after World War II. So I do periodically go to the modern military, mystery in this case. But I'd love them. Everybody else, send questions for sure, but send us your examples. I'd like to know what is good out there.
Yeah, we can put them on our reading list. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
We do read things that aren't in dead languages every once in a while.
Yeah,
so,
every once in a while. Just
good question, Sanders.
Good question. Besides, we're going to use all these historical fiction as actual historical sources.
Oh, I couldn't. It was just the darndest thing for us. Like, there it is. Wait, what? And and I sort of going off a tangent here, or whatever. But this is actually a way of also kind of shouting out one of the huge advantages that I am deeply aware that I have that was not there 20, 30 years ago. Is, look, I found that not by sitting in a library for hours and hours and hours and hours reading, but by actually doing essentially a Google search, right? Mm-hmm. By searching on, I think it was Google Books. I got the right phrase to get it to pop up, and boom, there it was. And yeah, that is something that could not have done 20 years ago.
No.
And
that's right.
and it really is a kind of power, So I don't blame those other scholars for having kind of bought this. Because like, how would they have figured it out? I don't know how they would have figured it out. So there's, it's kind of cool what the modern world does for us. All right. Continuing on.
Well, great question.
Great question. Craig Keller asks, well, I say asks. He actually this was kind of more imperative. This was This was a command. Tell me about condottieri.
Yeah. Good luck.
How is a man at arms usually recruited to a free company, and how does he go about acquiring arms and armor? What is daily life like for a soldier of fortune on campaign? Oh,
And
man.
and I think that this is really a complex question. I mean, we can't answer it within one time frame. For example,
No.
condottieri, which we get from the Italian, uh, meaning mercenary, and it's stuck. Even in the Italian history, there are mercenaries that are not condottieri in the way that Craig is asking, which is looking at the 14th, 15th century primarily. In short, in Italy in the 14th century, after having had losses to very large communities when they took their militias into battle, such as Campaldino in 1289, they come back and say, wait a second, we got all this money. We don't have people. We don't have people now to do the cloth weaving that we need to base our economy on. And so they started hiring
Yeah.
condottieri. And that's what I think, where I think Craig's going. There's mercenaries that have always been around. There are mercenaries back in the fall of Rome. Of course, the Huns
Yeah.
fighting on both sides, Vandals fighting on both sides, Goths fighting on both sides. Um, and so their mercenaries are a really fascinating time, or fascinating military perspective. In the early I mean, in the 14th, 15th century, in Renaissance Italy, if you're thinking about it, the recruitments were done by companies. So no town ever recruited a single soldier. They would recruit a company under a captain.
Right.
So John Hawkwood being the most famous of these. I mean, his portrait's still on the wall of the fresco, or in the wall of the Duomo in Florence. And he would come in and he would get an order. We need 1,500 troops, and then he would recruit them.
Yeah.
So they were paid a lot, but he would do the recruitment. He would provide the arms and armor, and he would provide the leadership and also and break down into various groups and so forth. So it was all done by somebody who was a captain who then would sign a whole group together, and changes warfare quite considerably in the Renaissance Italy, but elsewhere too. They're all over the Hundred Years' War.
Yeah, and I mean, you did have companies kind of like this, in the sense of recruitment, for the Crécy campaign or whatever, that I will supply this many men or whatever, and they're going to be this kind of armed. But yeah, this is on a kind of professionalized, hired out way, as you say, that is quite new. Yeah. So how did you get recruited? I mean, really, you could almost think about this as the medieval. What is it, Zip Recruiter or what, whatever, like,
Yeah.
hi, I'm a fighter, Mr. Hawkwood, Sir Hawkwood, do you need another arm? Yeah, we do, we're filling this order and we need another arm.
Yeah. This is where my expertise is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this is what I can provide. This is, if I have gear, right, this is what I already have. Does that change, what I'm being paid or whatever? All of this stuff was, in a sense, I would say kind of like not as weird as we might kind of like, we might think it'd be really foreign.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't. I mean, this is a job, right? I'm applying for a job. Here's my skill set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. And
this is what I'm good at.
This is what I'm good at. These are the arms and armor I can provide. Usually, the arms and armor were provided by the soldier themselves. We've got in our reader, we have a young soldier who's renting a suit of armor, for example.
Yeah, I love that source.
So he's got to have the right stuff. If you could have the right armor, you're going to be placed in you're going to be getting more money and placed in a more lucrative role in the mercenary group. But Mike and I in the reader, we wanted to do one of these condottieri contracts. They're pages upon pages of legalese. So somebody is you almost view the the consigliere of the Godfather standing next to John Hawkwood, and looking over this contract and going, John, this passage, man. Sorry, they're gonna not pay you not pay you up front. There's no bonuses, these sort of things that would be in a contract. And
This is like some of the Hollywood contracts I've looked at. You're like, what? Like, how small are you going to make that font? Are you kidding?
Yeah,
What right did you just try to grab? No, I'm not
yeah.
signing that.
But there are
Uh,
and these are, you can find them. I mean, Italian archives of the period are filled with these contracts because every
yeah,
town went forward, and then contracts. So Florence would often loan Hawkwood out. We're talking about, again, coming back to the Hollywood idea that they would loan an actor out. One Universal loan Warner Brothers an actor. Well, this happened too. I mean, the Florentines loaned John Hawkwood and his group out to the Paduans in order to gain favor, and they got paid too. So it's a fascinating world, and
yeah. And yeah, what's daily life like for a soldier of fortune on campaign? Like a soldier on campaign.
yeah, yeah,
It really isn't a whole lot different. Um,
and I honestly think that nobody wakes up, turns 10 and says, "Oh, I want to be a condottiero." I mean, this is
hey, you
not
don't
something.
know. I think that'd be awesome.
Well, maybe, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a condottiere. Uh,
Yeah,
but I
those
do
guys look
think,
like they're having fun.
yeah, yeah, and they're
They're
eating
all
well, and
they're all wearing a cool sash. I want a cool sash.
that's right.
Like,
You know, I think that and of course we've got the Swiss ones that are around a town. So the town is essentially the captain, and they'll loan these things out through the Italian wars of the 16th century. But I think there's a lot of soldiers that we do know. Hawkwood comes out of the Hundred Years' War, for example. A lot of soldiers that are, employed by their national army, if you want to call it that, the ducal army, their royal army, and then suddenly peace is made, and they've got the option of going back to wherever they came from and try to eke out a living, or maybe continuing their life that has given them all the adrenaline rush and everything else. And these young people who don't have families back at home don't have any reason to go back at home, and so why not go to Italy? John Hawkwood's hiring men. We can make some money, plus we'll have 3 meals a day, and let's do it. So,
why go home when you can just keep following the Grateful Dead on tour?
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
On tour happened in the Hundred Years' War happened to be the lands around Avignon, and it's the Avignonese papacy that pays these guys off, and following
I
the Treaty of Brittany.
I hope somebody out there just got a chuckle from a reference to Deadheads.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I was gonna go with fish, but it didn't feel right.
No,
Uh,
we're
so
too old for fish.
so yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Craig. It, as Kelly said, it depends a lot on circumstance, exactly where, when we are. But for the most part, it's really not going to be tremendously different. Which, I mean, is itself kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Feels like it should be very different, but yeah, it's not.
I think it is different in the way they're viewed at the time, and way that they take parts in battles. I mean, these are experienced men. They're going to go on the front at the Battle of Castignaro. Hawkwood holds down the line, and his archers are shooting into the opposing armies, and then he realizes the flags are the banners are not being protected, and rides over and gets them. So I think that that's where you're going to see the difference, not so much as the life of the soldier, so much as the actual military adventures of the soldier.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a professional, right?
Yeah,
That's literally his job, right? And if he doesn't do well at this, he doesn't get paid. So he's going to do well. This isn't a matter of fighting for convenience or anything like that, or momentary pride. This is literally my job, and I better be good at it,
yeah.
or I don't
Or
get
I'll be
paid.
dead too. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
other option. Not just out of a job,
yeah, but I mean, also if he runs away, right? What does that
oh
do
yeah,
for advertising, right? So if you really kind of just think about this as yeah, like a business, which it was, and a very lucrative
yeah.
one for somebody like Hawkwood, it all kind of fits in place.
But we go all the way back. I mean, mercenaries are part of every medieval army. I think you've got a group of individuals who are serving for financial gain, even if they're serving in a royal army or so.
Yeah. Curtis Hyatt. Hi, Curtis. Curtis Hyatt asks, is this kind of a couple multifaceted question here. How available would military history works or theories be to your average commander? And then further, how would their firsthand experience affect that view? So he suggests here, as possibilities like the Black Prince, Bertrand de Gascoigne. I'm sure they would at least know Vegetius. He says, how would that firsthand experience play out when they don't have that level of access that we have to these kind of treatises? So, yeah, a great question.
Yeah, and we could go on. We could go to the extremes. Bernie Backrack, who's shout out to Bernie. He's one of the great military historians. He believed, for example, that Fulk-Dara, who we wrote a biography on, he believed that Fulk-Dara, because of the maneuvers he took on the battlefield, was reading Vegetius. So must have had a copy with him. So he says, "Oh well, William the Conqueror would have, and all these generals would have had a copy. We don't have that. Unfortunately, we don't have that evidence, and I'm not entirely certain that they wouldn't would not necessarily be reading them or even have a copy, but they would probably have advisors who had that knowledge. So I guess technically they would still be having them on the battlefield and be well versed in it. I'm not as confident in that. I'm not sure how much they would have known Vegetius, or how much they would have known Frontinus, or even Christina Pizan in the 15th century. I think that they are maybe trained overall.
So, hi there again. Apologies for interrupting our regularly scheduled programming, but, well, something funny happened. Everything up to this part of our recording for this episode was done with me in my office at the Citadel and Kelly at his home. But I'm recording this bit alone in a hotel room in Bordeaux, France. If I sound different, that's why. Obviously, something went wrong. Kelly and I continued to have a wonderful chat going through your questions. Seriously, it was magnificent. But for some reason, from this point forward, only my track was recorded. So if you were to listen to it, you'd only get my side of the conversation. We talked about running it like this, leaving it like some kind of avant-garde theater where you had to fill in Kelly's lines based on whatever I drone on about. Instead, you have me apologizing here for the error and promising that we'll get back to those questions you sent in that were not recorded. As for when that will happen, it's complicated. Among the things we talked about at the end of our ghost recording session is the fact that Kelly and I were both headed and have now arrived in Europe. He is, in fact, in the next room over from mine, hopefully asleep after a much wonderful, amazing, incredible, I don't have words for it, march through Bordeaux today. We're here doing a lot of things, but among them are investigations of the battles of Poitiers, which we've discussed on the show, and Castillon, which we have not. After that, we'll go our separate ways rather than all over the place, and for a couple weeks, we'll have a great time doing all kinds of things alone before we meet up again in Istanbul for some more fun. Then we're separated a bit for a few days, and then we meet up again at Leeds. We don't know if we'll manage it across all that kind of madness for the next few weeks, but we do hope to record a show or two while we're out traveling between now and then. In specific, between now and the International Medieval Congress in Leeds, where we'll be recording a very special Q&A episode in front of a live studio audience, as they say. So, if you're coming to Leeds, I highly recommend coming for the occasion, which will give you the chance to join us for the fun in person. Should be a grand time. Anyway, we apologize again for the brevity of this particular episode. Kelly, again, said some smashing great things that I'm sad you can't hear, but hopefully the redo will be just as much fun when it happens. In the meantime, thanks for listening. Please do take care of yourselves out there, and we'll see you in Leeds. Thanks.